So, the impact of Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act on transportation and funding in Montana. I'm Alice Hecht with the Legislative Fiscal Division. The Department of Transportation is funded with a combination of federal and state special revenue. The federal revenue coming from the federal highway bill and the state special revenue coming from state fuel taxes of roughly 33 cents, well, of exactly 33 cents per gallon for regular gasoline and 29.75 cents per gallon for diesel. As you can see in the chart, most years, roughly 40% of funding is from state special revenue, whereas 60% of funding is from federal special revenue. Most projects use a combination of these funds, and the state funds are known as matching funds. Because of this, when the federal government increases funding, it means more state funds are also needed. The department uses the cash balance of the Highway State Special Revenue Account in order to pay for projects until it is reimbursed by the federal government. Because of this, it needs to have a lot of cash on hand. Most projects require a funding match, a certain percentage of state funding in order to receive federal reimbursement. The state is required to meet a maintenance of effort or an MOE in order to receive the maximum match. This is done mostly with a program known as the Statewide Pavement Preservation Program, in which projects are paid for 100% with state funds in order to preserve pavement for longer periods of time. As you can see in the chart to the right, which shows federal apportionment and obligations, projects require a match, which is a certain amount of state funding in order to receive federal reimbursement. The orange line represents the match and is represented by the numbers below it. So as you can see in 2013, roughly $400 million worth of federal funding was matched with approximately $41.9 million in state funding. The maintenance of effort is shown below. Maintenance of effort for 2013 was roughly $10 million of fully state-funded projects in order to receive the favorable match rate that Montana gets for having so much federal land. So here again is an example of match rates for different programs. The main program is administered by the Federal Highway Administration, and the standard match again is roughly 13% state dollars to 87% federal dollars for every dollar of construction spending. The interstate receives a more favorable match, and the reservation has zero match. There are different match rates for each program, depending on what it is and where it comes from. Montana received 26% more in the most recent federal aid highway program than it did in the previous one, the FAST Act. On this chart, it shows the length of each federal highway program starting in the year 2000 and continuing into 2026, through which IIJA is going to last. You can see that there were small increases in the amount federally apportioned to Montana and obligated by Montana in each year until the passage of IIJA, when there was a large jump in the amount. And that jump is basically a rebasing of what the state will be and all states will be receiving from their highway bill. They're not going to go back down. Federal funds are distributed to states by a formula, and the formula includes such factors as land area, population, vehicle miles traveled, among other factors. The federal highway bill provides federal funding and policy stability over time, which is really important because construction projects take years of planning. States are again apportioned a certain amount for each fiscal year, but must obligate projects in order to ensure they receive federal reimbursement. This funding trifecta is illustrated here. The state needs to have a large amount of cash on hand, which is in the form of the Highway State Special Revenue Account, or HESRA, fund balance. The state cash is used to cover valid federal expenditures until reimbursement is received. So adequate cash is also needed to provide the state match. Federal authority comes in the form of the federal highway bill. The state budget is needed, though, in order to unlock this federal authority. The budget is required to be for the years that any federal expenditure is actually incurred, the years that the projects are done, not the year that the projects are planned in. State appropriation, mostly in the form of House Bill 2, is in the state fiscal year. So you need both a large cash balance and an appropriation to release cash from the Treasury. State funding, again, is mostly the Highway State Special Revenue Account, or HESRA, which comes from the fuel tax of 33 cents per gallon, which is a flat tax. The tax has been was very flat for a number of years. Here you can see it raised up in 1995 to 27.75 cents per gallon for diesel and 27 cents per gallon for regular. In 2017, due to declining fund balance, the fuel tax was raised incrementally in the BARSA account, which no longer exists. That is a sidetrack here, but we are currently at 33 cents a gallon for fuel. On the bottom chart, you can see IIGA and increased fuel tax revenue. The fuel tax revenue being shown in green, and the federal IIJ funds are shown in beige. You can see there was the increase in federal funding also required an increase in fuel tax revenue. For many years, the MDT plan managed a declining fund balance, especially prior to 2017, due to flat tax, fuel tax, and increased fuel efficiency, which was offset slightly by increases in traffic. However, the chart on the right shows the ending fund balance by fiscal year. Please disregard 2025, as this balance will fluctuate wildly until the end of the year. But prior to 2017, this fund balance was declining each year as inflation made projects more expensive. However, the fuel tax was flat. In 2017, you can see the ending fund balance starts to increase. In fiscal year 2022, IIJA was enacted, which increased federal funding by over 20%. However, this demanded more of the state special revenue account. Therefore, the fund has flattened out and is not increasing its balance. In order to counteract this, in the 2023 session, the SAFER Act was enacted. This was a transfer of 100 million general fund into a state special account called the SAFER account. This account allows up to 15 million per year to be used for match for federal redistribution funds and discretionary grants in each fiscal year. And what federal redistribution funds are is in August each year, the federal government looks at the balances of apportionment that states have not used in time and redistributes it to other states that have projects ready to go. Montana is very good about having projects ready to go and typically gets this funding. There's also several discretionary grants, which are grants that must be applied for in each fiscal year. This also allows match for all of these extra funds that are very difficult to plan for because they're received after they are applied for, but it will keep it from cutting into the HESRA balance. And finally, there are some risks always involved. The main problem and the main risk we've come across with this large increase is that construction costs have risen over 25% since the passage of IIJA. This is the National Highway Construction Cost Index. And as you can see, between 2022 and 2025, prices have risen quite a bit. Fuel tax is also not responsive to inflation. We will receive 33 cents a gallon even as the dollar continues to lose buying power. A third risk is increased fuel efficiency due to CAFE standards and electric vehicles. However, House Bill 60 instated a registration fee for electric vehicles depending on class and type, and has brought in roughly $1 million since it was put into action. And that concludes my presentation. Are there any questions?